Today's our third and final day on solving equation word problems. Today's word problems are going to deal with consecutive numbers. So in order to understand these word problems, we're going to have to understand what consecutive means. So consecutive means one after another. So it's just like the next one in line. So consecutive numbers would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's one after the other, and so on. The way we can write this using variables is x, then I'd add more to get 1 to get the next one, add 2 to get the next one, and so on. Because if we think about it, if say x was 1, I would do 1 plus 1 and it would make 2. 1 plus 2 would make 3, and it would go in order. Consecutive even numbers are like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. And the way we write that using variables is x plus 2, x plus 4, and so on. And again, think about it. I'll do a little side bubble over here. If my x was, say, 2, and I did x plus 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. Then next it says to do x plus 4. Again, and we said x was 2. So 2 plus 4 is 6. Notice it did go 2, 4, 6. So it is a set of consecutive even numbers. Lastly, we have consecutive odd numbers like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, so on. And we can represent those using letters just like we did with the even. So x plus 2, and x plus 4. All right, so here's what the problems are going to look like. The sum of two consecutive numbers is 123. Find the numbers. So first we have to think about what this is asking. So remember, sum means to add. So it's saying we have two numbers that are consecutive. So that's one after the other, that when I add them together, it equals 123. So now I know I have something plus something equals 123. That's what that just told me. I also know they're consecutive, so I know it's one after the other. So we're going to do that writing it with the letters so we can make an equation. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to write x plus the number after x would be x plus 1. So this is one number, this is the next number, and I know they add to get 123. So I filled in my blanks with what was written up here. So now I can just solve this like I would a normal equation. So x plus x would make 2x plus 1 equals 123. I'm going to move it up here. So I have 2x plus 1 equals 123. Subtract your 1. You get 2x equals 122. Divide by 2. And we end up seeing that x is 61. So it said to find your two numbers. Well, number 1 is just x. And we just found that that equaled 61. Number 2 that I'm looking for, we said was this x plus 1. So that'll be 61 plus 1. How did I know to put 61 in there? Because I just found that x was 61. And then 61 plus 1 is 62. So my two numbers are 61 and 62. And that would be your answer. Now try number 2 on your own. For number 3, it says find two consecutive even numbers whose sum is 54. So if you go back up to the top of your notes, it said when we have consecutive even numbers, we write it like x plus 2, x plus 4. So if I need two numbers, two even numbers, that when I add them up, their sum, so they will add up to 54. So this has to be even number 1, and this one would be even number 2. And they also have to be consecutive, which remember has to be like back to back, like 2 and 4, or 4 and 6. So let's let our even number 1, we'll call that x, and we'll let our even number 2 be called x plus 2. And again, I'm getting that from up here in our notes. So I know when I do x plus 2, it has to equal 54. So all I did was substitute even number 1 as x. I put x in for even number 1. And I put x plus 2 in where it said even number 2. So now we have an equation to solve. So we're going to first combine like terms. So we have an x and an x, which makes 2x plus 2 equals 54. Subtract your 2, and you get 2x equals 52. Divide both sides by 2, and 52 divided by 2 is 26. So I have that x is 26. So now if we answer our question, one of our numbers will be 26, but for our other number, it wants us to do 26 plus 2, which is 28. So our answer is the numbers 26 and 28. And you can always check. These two numbers we're supposed to add to make 54. So in your calculator right now, if you did 26 plus 28, you should get 54. All right, let's try number 4. So number 4 says the sum of two consecutive odd numbers is 128. And it wants me to find the number of what numbers add up to make 128 that are both odd. So remember in our little chart up here, it said to make consecutive odd numbers, we use x, x plus 2, x plus 4, and so on. So I know I need a number, some odd number, plus another odd number that's consecutive to it, one after the other. And when I add those up, it has to equal 128. So to do this, let's define some variables. We'll say that odd number 1, I'm going to call that just plain old x, right? It's set up here that we could just start with x. And we'll let odd number 2, it said our next one should be x plus 2. So if I substitute these values in, where it says odd number 1 in our equation, I'm going to replace that with x. So it'd be x plus, and where odd number 2 is, I'm going to put x plus 2. And then I know these have to equal 128. So combine like terms, you have an x plus an x, which makes 2x plus 2 equals 128. And I'm going to go ahead and do this over here. Let me rewrite it. So 2x plus 2 equals 128. Subtract 2 from both sides. So on the left, we're just left with 2x. On the right, 128 minus 2 is 126. Divide both sides by 2, and you get that x equals 63, which is great. But now we have to answer our question. So if we're going back over here to get our two numbers, to get the first odd number, it says it's just whatever x is, which we just found was 63. To get odd number 2, it told me here to do whatever x is and add 2. So 63 plus 2 is 65. So your two numbers are 63 and 65. And again, you can check, is 63 plus 65 128? And it is. All right, go ahead and try number 5 on your own now. All right, the last example says the sum of 3 consecutive odd numbers is 57. What are the three numbers? So now I have three blanks. Something plus something plus something has to add up to 57. The other stipulation is that they all have to be odd in a row. So this will be odd number 1. This is my next odd number 2. And my last odd number we'll call odd number 3. So if we define our variables here, we'll call odd number 1. This is just x. And again, I'm back up here using this table. It says to do x, x plus 2, and x plus 4. That's where these are coming from. So odd number 1 is x. My odd number 2, to get the next consecutive odd number we add to, and to get the next odd number, so to get odd number 3, we're going to do x plus 4. And let me remind you why that is. Let's just pretend for a second here that my first odd number 1 is 1. Think about it. What would be the next odd number? It should be 3, right? Well, if I do x plus 2, will I get 3? We said this was initially our x. 1 plus 2 is 3. To get odd number 3, it says we should take whatever x is and add 4. Well, remember we said x was 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. Did I just make another odd number that's in a row? Yes, 1, 3, 5. So that's where those are coming from. In case you forget them, you should try to memorize it, but in case you forget it, you can always like go back to, okay, 1, 3, and 5. How would I get from one to the other? All right, so those are our three pieces. So now if we substitute each of them in, so we said odd number 1 is x. So I would have x plus, then we said odd number 2 is x plus 2. So I'm going to write x plus 2 plus, lastly, we identified odd number 3 as x plus 4. And we know that equals 57. All right, so if we combine like terms, we have 1x, 2x, 3x. And as far as our whole numbers go, we have a plus 2 and a plus 4. So that'll make a plus 6 equals 57. Subtract your 6 from both sides. You get 3x equals 51. Divide by 3, and you get x equals 17. But again, we have to answer our question. So let's figure out what these three odd numbers had to be. So we just found that x was 17. So now to get odd number 2, we're going to do 17 plus 2, which is 19. And lastly, to get odd number 3, we have to do 17 plus 4, which is 21. So my three numbers are 17, 19, and 21. So when we add those three numbers up, we should get 57. So I do recommend checking them to make sure it does work out before you turn your work in, or like when you're doing a test. All right, I am going to let you do number number 7 on your own, and I'm going to do number 8 with you. Okay, so last problem here. It says in cross country, the team score is determined by the place each individual runner finishes. For example, first place is 1 point, 16th place is 16 points. And their latest meet, the boys cross country team scored 55 points. So I know they scored a total of 55 points. If there were 5 runners on the team and each runner finished one after another, so this is telling us, hey, we're talking about consecutive numbers because they finished one after the other. What place did each come in? So that's what we're trying to figure out. So we know that total, this team scored 55 points. And I also know that there were 5 runners. So I know when I add up runner number 1 plus runner number 2 plus runner number 3 plus runner number 4, and lastly runner 5, all their points should add up to 55. So let's define all these runners with variables. So we'll let, I'm going to abbreviate, runner number 1 be equal to x. So this one isn't talking about even or odd. It's just talking about the next one in line. So remember, when you're talking about just like the next one in line, you just add 1. So it'd be x and then x plus 1, which would make runner 3 x plus 2. Runner 4, add 1 more, would be x plus 3. And runner 5, add 1 more to the 3, and you would get x plus 4. So again, if you want to like kind of think about it to see if that's right, let's just pretend that x is 1. So if x is 1, 1 plus 1 makes 2. 1 plus 2 makes 3. 1 plus 3 makes 4. 1 plus 4 makes 5. So those are all consecutive numbers there in a row. So now, if I plug everything in, it would look like this. So it'd be x plus runner 2 is x plus 1 plus runner 3 is x plus 2 plus runner 4 is x plus 3. And lastly, we identified runner 5 as x plus 4. And we know total they made 55 points. All right, so we have some heavy-duty combining like terms here. We have an x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x. So 5 x's. All right, if we can combine our constants, we have a plus 1, plus 2 makes 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 4 makes 10. So I get plus 10 equals 55. Solve for x. I'm going to have to subtract my 10. I get 5x equals 45. Divide by 5. X equals 9. All right, so now I can figure out what all of my places were. So runner number 1 came in 9th place. Runner number 2 came in 10th place. Runner number 3, 9 plus 2, is 11th place. Runner number 4, 9 plus 3 makes 12th place. And lastly, runner number 5, I would do 9 plus 4, and I get 13th place. So these runners came in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. So make sure you answer the actual question. It said, what places did each come in? All right, that concludes your video on the 3rd day of word problems.